Here inside the Sikh Museum of Canada, November 11th is marked by remembering the role and legacy of Sikh Canadians in this country's war efforts. And one of the men behind creating this tribute is known for making history himself, fighting discrimination in the ring. His story so inspiring that Hollywood has taken notice.
The ABC will argue it's their tradition that fighters must shave.
This is who I am. I have a right to fight. So do we, Sikh.
In the upcoming movie Tiger, an amateur boxer is backed up into a corner, forced to either shave his beard, a mandatory part of a Sikh religion, to be allowed to enter the ring, or fight the ban that discriminates against his faith. His decision? To take on the boxing industry.
I don't want to be that guy that ruins the sport he loves, or ruins it for you or the other fighters.
You want to quit? Be a quitter.
This story didn't just play out on the big screen. It's based on this Toronto man, Pardeep Singh Nagra, who 18 years ago finally got the beard ban lifted across Canada after years of fighting.
My biggest fight and first fight was outside of the ring, and so I thought it was incumbent on me. It was my responsibility to make sure that I can challenge the rules and regulations so that we can open up the sport for many other athletes.
What was it that ultimately made you want to fight?
Well, you know, my first priority was as an athlete. I'm an athlete and I want to compete. We need to stand up against injustice, intolerance, marginalization. And that's the first step. And the second step is to recognize that what makes us Canadian is our diversity.
His fight drawing some parallel to some of the challenges faced by the heroes displayed on the walls at the Sikh Heritage Museum of Canada, where he serves as the executive director. They were brave men who enlisted in the Canadian Army at a time when Sikhs were prevented from immigrating to this country.
People who looked like me were turned away on the shores of Canada on board the Congo-Maru. Yet we still found a way that when Canada put the call out to find ways to serve. And even when the call went out, the initial call was not looking for racialized people to serve. And so whether it was the Indigenous community, the Black community, the Sikh community, or many others who are racialized.
These racialized groups are oftentimes not included in the teachings of history, but these stories are starting to come to light, and not only at the Sikh Heritage Museum of Canada. The tributes and artifacts in this building not only serve to educate, but for those continuing this legacy in the Canadian military, it's an eye-opening experience.
This event is especially important to me because there's just so much history around me that I did not know of. It's extremely overwhelming, and it pushes me forward to achieve greater things within the Army as well.
As people make their way inside this museum today, what are you hoping they walk away with?
Several things. I think an understanding that, wow, shoulder to shoulder stood your grandfather and my grandfather. When the call was made, we were all there. Whether you were of a particular shade of brown or a shade of pale or grey. We were all together in those trenches.
Those Sikh boxers are now allowed to compete with their beards in Canada. That isn't the case internationally. Many of these athletes continue to fight this ban, even citing Nagra as an example. The Canadian man remains in their corner. For City News, I'm Faiza Amin.